Hello everyone, welcome back to Aseen's. So in today's video we will be discussing the part 3, also the very last part of crop production and management. So let's get started. Okay, so as said, this is the last video, so obviously it is going to cover all the remaining topics that we have left out, and by that I mean protection from weeds, harvesting, storage and food from animals. Okay, so very quickly let's start with weeds. So what are these weeds now? So if I have to explain you the definition, weeds are nothing but the undesirable plants growing naturally along with crops are called weeds. So weeds are plants which grow along with crops, but they are undesirable. Undesirable here means we are not growing them, they have grown on their own, but we don't want them to grow. These are some excess plants which grow like during monsoon, during when you add water to the soil, naturally most of the plants grow. They are nothing but weeds. You are not intending or you are not wishing for them to grow, but still they grow. So such kind of plants, they come under weeds. So now, why are these weeds dangerous, or what are the effect of these weeds on the crops? So weeds compete with crops for water, nutrients, space and light. So when these weeds grow along with crops, specifically we are talking about crops because we are talking about crop management. So when you are growing crops, and as you are growing, obviously you are adding all the necessary nutrients and water to the soil, and because of which your crops will start to grow. As they are growing, what happens is these weeds will also start to grow naturally, but there is a negative effect of these weeds on our plants, on our growing crops. So what are this negative effect? They are competing with our crops. Competing, what do you mean by competing? They are having a competition with our crops. Competition for what? They are fighting, these weeds and crops, they are fighting with one another for water, for nutrients from the soil, for space and for light. Okay, so water and nutrients are something the plants need in proper amount for good growth, right? For good yield. So when these weeds start growing, they also require this nutrients and water. They are also plants, so they start to absorb those nutrients and water from the soil, leaving less amount for the growing crops. So now again, either you need to supply more of the nutrients, more of the water, or get rid of these weeds. Okay, next, they also fight for space and light. Okay, so regarding space, if you remember sharply while explaining sowing, I have clearly mentioned that we sow seeds at a proper distance, not too close, not too far away. We don't want wastage of land, neither do we want to crowd the plants. So what we keep in mind is, once the crop is completely grown, what size it is going to be. So that much size we keep, that much distance we keep between the two seeds that we are sowing. If you don't keep this distance, because of less space, the crops will not be able to grow. So same thing happens here. Whatever space is left in between, in them the weeds will start to grow. So as they start to grow, obviously it's going to be crowded again and the crops might die. Moreover, they fight for light. Okay, so the amount of sunlight which falls on them, okay, it's not a, there is nothing much to compete in case of light, because light is something which they'll get equally, because the fields does not have any kind of trees or any kind of shady environment there. Okay, but still they fight for light as well. Okay, so because of all these factors, these weeds, they affect the growth of plants negatively. They are causing some changes in the growth of the plants. These changes are not positive changes, in fact they are negative changes. That means they are hindering or they are disturbing the growth of the plant. They are not promoting it, they are not making it to grow faster or better, but they are making it to grow weaker and lesser. Okay, moreover, some of the weeds are poisonous. Yes, this is something which you need to know, that though these weeds are something which grow naturally, there are most of the weeds out there which are poisonous. So we need to find them out, we need to separate them from the crops as far as possible, as soon as possible, because crops are something which is taken as food and we don't want this poisonous weeds to join with them. Okay, so that was about weeds. Next, we are going to talk about protection from weeds. As we have already established, these weeds are up to no good, neither to the crops nor to us. When they are growing with crops, they are reducing the quality of the crops. If they are poisonous and if you leave it like that, then they are going to affect your health. So obviously, we need protection from the weeds. So how do we protect ourselves? Either by removing the weeds, okay, or getting rid of them. So the removal of weeds is called weeding. The word used here is weeding. Okay, so most of the time weeds can be removed by tilling. So tilling, as explained before, it's nothing but plowing, that is turning the soil and loosening the soil. Okay, so what are the benefits of tilling over here in case of weeds? When you till the land, if there are any weeds left behind, these weeds will be uprooted. Uprooted in a sense, from the roots you are pulling them out. Okay, by the method of plowing or tilling. So once they are uprooted, you are not separating them from the soil. You are just leaving them, turning the soil, and you are leaving them. This uprooted plant is not going to survive. Obviously, it's dead now. So with time, it will start to decompose. Right, in the soil itself, it will decompose, it will turn into nutrients, and it will get mixed with the soil. So one good thing about this is, as it is getting decomposed and mixed with the soil, it is adding to the manure and nutrient to the soil. So obviously it's going to be a plus point. The next thing is physical removal. Physical removal is by uprooting them. Uprooting them is nothing but pulling those weeds with your hands, okay, pulling it out. So with the roots itself, they are going to come out. Or the other method is cutting them close to the ground. Cutting them close to the ground means, very much near to the ground, you are going to use a khurpi or a seed drill and cut them out. So this is the khurpi that I was talking about just a second back. So using this, they are going to cut it, or seed drill. Seed drill is nothing, as far as I remember, I have already told you how you are going to, this seed drill is nothing but it's going to help you to sow the seeds at a proper distance. So this seed drill can be also used to separate the, to uproot the weeds. Now, other than this, the next thing what you need to know about killing the weeds or getting rid of the weeds is weedicide. What is this weedicide now? Weeds are also controlled using chemicals called weedicides. So weedicides are chemicals which help you to stop the growth of weeds. So the example is 2,4-D. This is a chemical. Okay, we'll be seeing the picture as you can see on the screen. It's a chemical as you can see on the picture. Okay, so weedicides, how do you use them? You are diluting them with water and then spraying them on crops using a sprayer. So this is how it is done. Okay, as you can see, the farmer is using a sprayer and spraying a liquid on the crops. So this liquid is nothing but weedicide, the chemicals, example like 2,4-D, they are diluted in water, okay, depending upon the amount required to do, and then they are sprayed on the plants. Okay, now the good thing about weedicide is they do not damage the crops. They do not have any effect on the crops, just on the weeds, and they are going to only kill the weeds. But they affect the health of the farmers. So they are not good to the living organisms. Hence the farmer, as you can see here, the farmer is covering his mouth and his nose while he's spraying, so that he is not affected by the chemical. Okay, coming to the next topic, jumping on harvesting. So what is this harvesting now? Harvesting, reaping is the same. Okay, since in your textbook they have used the word only harvesting, so we are going to be in touch with only this word. Okay, so harvesting is nothing but cutting of crops after it is mature. Okay, once the crop has grown completely and the grains are completely formed, they are ready, they are ripe now. So in that case you are going to cut these crops, they are ready now. Okay, so this cutting of these crops when they are mature is called as harvesting. So for harvesting, normally it takes 3 to 4 months for a cereal crop. Okay, so for a cereal, it depends upon the crops. All the crops do not have the same time period for their growth. Some might grow within few months, some might take a little more time. Okay, so once they are done, once they are mature, you are going to harvest them. So what is the method of harvesting? Crops are pulled out or cut close to the ground using sickle or harvester. So these crops are pulled out with your hands, bare hands. Okay, that is a traditional method. Or you are going to cut them with a sickle. What is a sickle now? You can see here on the screen. This is a sickle. They use it to cut down the crops near the ground. Okay, very much near to the ground. They are going to cut it. They are going to, you trim it. Just like that, they are going to cut it. Or instead of using a sickle is also requiring a lot of manpower. Instead they might be using harvester. It is a modern method and it is much easier to use harvester than to use a sickle. You won't be using much of your manpower, much of your energy here. So this is the harvester, as you can see on the screen. Once the harvesting is done, we need to jump on to the next step, that is threshing. So what is this threshing now, or why do we need to do it? As you can see here, the grains once harvested, they are covered in a thin hard layer called chaff. This is a protection layer around the grains. So now that we have harvested the plant, the crop, we need to remove this chaff. So it cannot be done manually by selecting one grains. Obviously it's going to be difficult. So what are the different methods or different choices do we have? Here comes threshing. So this threshing is nothing but this is a process by which you are going to separate the chaff and get the grains out of it. So threshing is done normally by a machine. It's called as a combine. This combine works as both harvester and thresher. Okay, this is the combine that we are talking about. Okay, so that's about threshing. Now let's talk about winnowing. Winnowing is a similar process just like threshing, just that winnowing can be done only when the grains are less. For large amount of grains, it's going to be very difficult to carry out winnowing process. So instead, when we are growing crops in a smaller field or in a small scale, that means not much, just a little amount, in that case winnowing is a easier process for threshing. So what is this winnowing and how it is done? Normally a farmer carries out the winnowing process with a winnowing machine. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, other than that, the normal method of winnowing, that is using your hand, is nothing but, as you can see the lady on the screen, she's flipping the grains. Okay, because of that what happens is the grains are falling down with a force. Once again she's going to flip it. She's going to do it continuously for few times and then she's going to blow air through it. Okay, so that whatever chaff has been separated, they fly out. They are separated from the grains what are left behind on her tray. Now that was about winnowing, that was about your harvesting. Now we are going to jump to the next step, that is storage. So storage is a very important process of your crop production management. So whatever harvested grain you have, okay, they contain lot of moisture. They contain a lot of water because they are freshly collected from the crops. So obviously they are going to have lots of moisture. Moisture is nothing but water in the form of liquid or in the form of vapor. Okay, so now this moisture is something which allows the grain to spoil faster. When a food content has got water quantity, in that case it spoils faster. If you want it to keep good for a longer time, you need to get rid of that water, you need to lose that water. So how are you going to do that? Obviously the simple method is drying. So you need to dry it properly in the sun. So when you dry it in the sun, what happens is most of the moisture is being lost and lost and lost, and whatever grains are left behind, they are with minimal amount of water, minimal amount of moisture. So this will help the grains to be in good condition for a longer time, months and years together. There won't be any harm coming to the crops. This is the first step. What you need to do, you have to dry your grains. Next thing what you need to know is, grains is not only spoiled by your moisture, but also by the insects, rats and microorganisms. So you need to find a way to save your crops or to save your grains from this ones also, insects, rats and microorganisms. Okay, so to carry on this process, we have got to see what are silos and granaries. See here, normally when the crops are in should I say finite quantity, we can store it in jute bags, gunny bags and metallic bins. You have got metallic bins and jute bags. Inside that we can easily store them. But when the crops are in very large quantity, and jute bags and metal bins, they don't feel helpful. So in that case, we do it in silos and granaries. So silos, what are these silos? What are these granaries? This is silos. Okay, the left-handed pick, okay, it's for the upper weave, from the as if you are flying in the sky and you are looking at the silos. Okay, so this is the silos from the upper weave, and this is the side weave. So they are large bin-like structures inside which they keep the grains stored. They maintain the temperature, they maintain the required the moisture content is kept low. So here all the grains will stay in the best condition for a longer period. And this is granary. So what is this granary now? They are like large godowns where you keep your grains in jute bags and you store them. Okay, time to time they keep on checking for the godown is normally sprayed with insecticides, pesticides. Okay, they are checked for rodents, moisture content, humidity, everything is kept in check. So this gunny bags or this jute bags full of grains are not going to spoil. They are maintained in good condition. Okay, so other than this methods, when people are storing at their home, okay, we store grains at our home, and even at our home we will find insects and pests growing with our grains. So to avoid them, there are some of the common home remedies. One of them is using dried neem leaves. So neem is something which is bitter in taste, and moreover it is known for its antibacterial and antimicrobial properties. So when you add this dried neem leaves, just mix it along with your grains. What happens is this pest and insects will not be able to grow. Okay, so you are directly stopping their growth. Other method is also using dried chili. Okay, I have seen most of the people using them. Then there are people who use cloves and all also. So when you add them, what happens is it will actually not allow the insects and pests, because of the strong smell of this is whatever you are adding excessively, that is dried neem or dried chili, or it could be clove. So it will not let the insects or the pest to grow in the presence. In case of big godowns, Okay, so if the godowns are very much big, so this methods of neem and all will not help. So here they use chemicals. They add chemicals. Chemical treatment is done. So when you spray chemicals around, these grains will be free from pest and microbes. So pest and microbes will not be allowed to grow in the presence of these chemicals. Okay, so the last part, food from animals. So obviously we don't get food only from the plants, we also take it from animals. It could be milk, it could be egg, okay, etc, etc. It could be even your meat. So it depends upon what we are collecting from the animals. So this animals, such kind of animals which give us something in return, they are domesticated. We rear them in farms, okay, specifically in farms or just at home. Okay, so when you are rearing these animals on a large scale, instead of rearing one or two, we are rearing multiple number of animals together in a farm. Then we call this method as animal husbandry. Okay, so regarding this you have got only to learn the introduction. So we are done over here with food from animals. So this was the last of this chapter. Okay, now in case of doubts, as you know, usually just leave me a comment at the bottom and I'll get back to you. Till then, keep watching. Thank you.